All right, what's up, everybody? I want to talk about something that happened with Grok Build over the last couple days that is not good. I think this exposes a much bigger issue with AI coding agents and harnesses, and I don't want to be overly alarmist about this. There's no evidence that somebody hacked Grok Build, stole any code, or that SpaceX AI trained any model on private repositories. It appears that the behavior I'm talking about today has also been disabled now, but the behavior itself was real. So what happened? A security researcher captured Grok Build uploading entire Git repositories to cloud storage, not just the file the model needed, not just a few relevant snippets, but tracked repositories and its Git history that were private. So this matters because we gave AI agents access to our whole computer, right? We're not just giving them the model, or we're not just trusting the model, but we're trusting that entire system wrapped around the model. And most people have no idea where those boundaries actually are. When you think about a model, you don't think about the harness like Claude Code, like Grok Build, like Codex that use the models like Grok 4.5, like Opus, Fable, GPT 5.6. So here's the factual version, what actually happened. Independent researcher Cereblab tested Grok Build's 0.2.93 and routed its network traffic through a proxy so they could inspect what data and information was leaving the computer. They created some test repositories with a fake canary secret, meaning they can see when it was opened. And the file that the agent was specifically told not to open was opened. Grok Build still created a Git bundle and sent it to the storage endpoint. The request succeeded, and the researcher captured that it bundled it, cloned it, and recovered the Grok file that it had been told not to read, along with the repository's Git history. So this was actually not only in the one repository, but they reproduced this on a second repository as well. So they ran a larger test with about 12 gigs of incompressible data before stopping the capture, and they recorded about 5.1 gigs of that 12 being accepted through the storage channel. And during that same session, the actual model requests were only looking at 192 kilobytes of data. So that means the actual model, from what they were prompting and using to code, was only 192 kilobytes, and yet it uploaded over 5 gigs. So this was a separate repository upload system, not a normal model response system. The destination was identified as a Google Cloud Storage bucket named Grok Code Session Traces. And again, this does not mean that the bucket was public. It does not mean that anyone accessed the code, but it does prove that the code left the developer's machine and was accepted by remote storage. Now, I do want to say that I ran a forensic scan of my computer and of Grok's history, and it did upload 8 of my personal project repositories. Thankfully, I didn't use this on any client content, so that's all safe. But really scary, not a good feeling. Yeah, so let's look at at what normal context really looks like when we're using an agent like this. So normal context does not equal full repository cloud upload. This distinction is incredibly important. If you use a cloud AI coding tool and ask it to refactor a file, it has to take that file, go to the model provider, and send that code to the provider. That's how the tool works. Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, Grok Build. If the model is running in the cloud, some of your code is going to leave your machine for inference. That's how it works. But there's a huge difference between sending the files needed for the current task and then silently packaging and sending your entire tracked repository for storage. That's the key word there, storage. So Git history makes this even more sensitive because a secret could be removed from your current version of your code or project, but still exist in an old commit, client names, architecture, deleted configurations, internal discussions. All of that can remain reachable through your Git history. The researcher also turned off the setting called improve the model, yet the repository was still uploaded. Not good. So the setting that controlled improvement for training did not control what the repository left the computer. It's a meaningful difference, and I don't think most users would naturally or natively understand it that way. So if we go down to look at trusting the harness and the model, I think this is something that's really important. This is, if you take one thing away from this entire video, it's this right here. This is the bigger lesson. When people talk about whether an AI model is safe, they're usually focusing on the model, right? Don't use DeepSeek because it's made by a Chinese company. Will it follow instruction? Is it misaligned? Can it be prompt injected? Are the things people are focusing on Will it reveal something it should not reveal? Now, these are real questions, but the model is only part of the system. It's only one part of the system. The harness is the actual application that is running around the model. It decides what files can be read, what commands can be run, which network requests are allowed, and which plugins are connected, get logged, cached, uploaded, etc. So while this incident specifically, the model did not decide to create a backup of the repository. This is not like a model behaving badly. The surrounding Grok Build software had a separate upload pipeline and had instructions to do so. So these are just two separate trust problems. First, you need to be able to trust the model, not to misuse the access you intentionally give it. Second, you need to trust that the harness does not do something outside the task you thought you authorized, meaning the model could, the harness could be doing something that you don't know about. You also have a third layer, which is every MCP server, plugin integration, telemetry provider, and storage vendor that are attached either by you or by the provider to that harness. So the model can be perfectly well behaved, yet the wrapper around it can create massive security surfaces and threats. Now, this is another one of the big things that I want to go through here, and that is onshoring does not mean isolated. Grok is owned by SpaceXAI. It's an American company. It may lower some jurisdictional or accountability risk compared to an unknown provider, but that does not mean that onshore equals isolated. Once a private source code is copied onto another cloud environment, it becomes another asset that has to be defended. It creates another identity system, permission model, and another retention policy, logging system, and another target for bad actors. A bad actor doesn't have to even own the model company. They only have to have a vulnerability or access to a vulnerability, leak credential, misconfiguration, compromise account, or anything in that entire supply chain that has a weakness for them to get into to steal that code. So there's no evidence that happened here. I'll be very clear. There's no evidence that that happened here or that this code was read or leaked by anyone. But the point is that unnecessary copies create unnecessary attack surfaces. A private repository sitting on your laptop inside your company's controlled GitHub organization has one risk profile. A second copy inside of a provider's debugging or session trace system has a different risk profile, and you might not even know that copy exists. Now, related to that, we're looking at I think the biggest risk here of all to people that have no idea is NDAs, client contracts, and losing control. So this gets even more serious if you're using these tools professionally. You might be under an NDA, you might be handling client code, working somewhere that restricts proprietary materials to approved systems and sub-processors. And depending on the agreement that you have, uploading a repository to an unapproved AI provider or storage system, that's key, could actually create a compliance or contract problem, even if no one ever looks at the data. This is an issue whether the code becomes public or not, because the way most contracts are written is disclosure could be the possibility of access, unapproved sub-processors reading it, or losing the ability to verify where the code exists or whether another copy exists. So I'm not saying that every cloud coding agent violates every NDA. Depends on the contract, your company's policies, and of course the provider's terms and how the data is involved. But for companies or client repositories, the model is no longer just a reputable piece. It has to be the entire stack, the model, the harness, and your MCPs. So just saying that the model company is reputable is not a complete security review. You need to know that the whole product sends it, stores it, how long it keeps it, and the sub-processors are all approved. And then, of course, what deletion actually means if your data gets deleted. So let's look at this actual problem that happened here with Grok. What was fixed? What was verified? So the good news is the whole repository appears to have been disabled now. So after the research became public, the same Grok Build client started receiving settings with trace upload enabled set to false and disabled code set to uploaded set to true. So it looks like on the server side, Grok disabled this function. Once they started seeing these come through, the researcher could no longer reproduce the repository upload at all, and they retested it in version 0.2.99 with the code-based upload disabled. So SpaceXAI has said that the /privacy command can disable retention and delete the previously synced data. Elon Musk also tweeted, as a precaution, all data upload that occurred before the announcement date would be completely deleted. that's the right direction, but we need to have that confirmed. I want to see a public announcement from XAI, not just a tweet about it. And I think a lot of the community still have a lot of questions. So there's been no detailed public incident report explaining which versions of the accounts or what accounts were affected, how long the repositories were retained for, how many users were affected, whether deletion has been independently verified, etc. So also to note, the /privacy command is a retention control. Testing indicates that a normal model request and session traffic can still leave the computer because it remains a cloud product. So obviously, even turning on the session product, you're still going to have your code, have to go to the server to have that inference happen and then send the response back. But what has allegedly stopped is full repository behavior that was a server-side code-based upload. So allegedly that has now stopped. And that's what we're talking about here. So I would describe this as mitigated, but not as if nothing has ever happened. I've come up with 5 questions that you should ask yourself before you run an agent on specific code. So I'm obviously not going to stop using AI agents. They're too useful. 80% of my day, I use them all day. But this is a good reminder to treat them like a third-party system with privileged access, because that's exactly what they are. It's very important to remember that. So before using anything on sensitive work, I'd ask 5 questions. Number 1, can the harness access what I think it can access? Is it just the current folder? Is it my whole repository? Is it my home directory? Is it environment variables, shell history? Where am I launching this harness, and what does it have access to? Number 2, what network destinations can it reach? Is it just a model API? Is it cloud storage? Are there telemetry services enabled? Are there MCP servers and third-party plugins enabled? Do I know where those go? Very important to kind of chase that all the way down if you're doing a proper security review. Number 3, what is transmitted for inference and what is separately retained for logs, debugging, session sync, or product improvement? Pretty explanatory here. Most of those settings are shown in your user account, but you should chase those down, have another AI go and inspect what the documentation says. Question number 4, can I disable those systems locally, or am I relying on a remote feature flag that could change without a client update? So when Grok disabled this entire repository upload, they actually disabled it from the server side. This was not something that we have control to go in and turn off. They enabled it and disabled it from the server side, which is not observable. So you may want to set up some sort of like daily task to check the log files for all your harnesses to see what they're actually doing. And then question number 5 is this repository actually approved under my NDA, employment contract, client contract, and company security policy? So is what I'm doing allowed? Is there a risk here? Whether you're asking yourself that question as a gut check first, or you're checking in with your company or your client's legal teams, it's something that you should be doing in this day and age. And if you have a very old contract, if it's an NDA you've been working under for years, the language is potentially pretty strict. Not a lawyer, not legal advice, but you probably should seek legal advice if you're using this for real corporate work. So if that repository that you're working on has ever contained real credentials, rotate them instead of assuming that the deleting of the current repository has removed them from Git, because again, it could sync your Git history, and then that Git history could be leaked. For highly sensitive projects, the answer may be that an approved enterprise plan with 0 data retention in their terms, a lockdown harness, network controls, or in a local model only is the only answer. But I'll leave that up to you, not what this video is about. So let's talk about the next section, the real lesson in control. So the lesson is not that Grok is evil or that every coding agent is going to steal your code. The evidence does not support that at all. I'll be clear about saying that. The lesson is that access and control are not the same thing. You can give access to an agent for a repository for one task while having no idea what the surrounding product is copying, logging, or retaining. You have to trust the model, but also the harness, provider, storage layer, plugins, and telemetry, and the deletion process. This is a lot of trust to place behind one command in your terminal. Like I said, typing Grok, G-R-O-K, those letters and then enter could upload your entire code base without you knowing about it and violate massive NDA terms, or worse, leak your code. So these tools are powerful because they can do so much, But this is why we need clearer disclosure, safer defaults, and controls that can match what developers think they're authorizing. Your misunderstanding of the control you've given is still your responsibility. It's your responsibility to understand this. As hard as the providers make it, it's still your job to actually go ahead and make sure you understand it. So if you're using coding agents for work, I'd love to know what your company is doing around this. Are you allowing them on private repositories? Do you have an approved provider list that you can use, that your security team or InfoSec team has vetted these harnesses and models? Or is everybody just quietly using them and kind of hoping for the best? I would seriously like to know. Please drop a comment and let me know. Subscribe if you want some more practical breakdowns. And I'll see you guys in the next one.